What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some battles in the Open Ultra League running the Tau Legendary Trio, which have all been buffed this season as Dragon Breath now gives them significantly better pacing to their signature charge moves, which by the way are all very good moves. Glaciate is an Icy Wind clone in terms of its damage and guaranteed attack debuff, however it costs just 40 energy, meaning it now takes just 10 turns for this Pokemon to spam out debuffs with still a respectable damage output. Now Fusion Bolt and Fusion Flare are Psystrike clones at 90 damage for 45 energy and can also be spammed significantly faster this season. With the Dragon Breath rework, these Pokemon feel so much more versatile and bad matchups don't feel nearly as punishing as they did in the past. I had some crazy clutch wins with this team, and I also battled against the Shadow King himself, Jamie Finn, for my final battle of the day, so make sure you stick around until the end of the video to see how that one plays out. Now before we get into the question of the day, I want to give a quick shout out to both Fungus Master and DC Cool 800 My Gamer for their donations and livestream theme requests in my most recent livestream. As always, the support is very much appreciated, and I very much look forward to attempting these themes in the future. With that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. What do you think is the most underrated Dragon Breath user this season? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Kyurem into a Florigist. So of course, Triple Dragon up against a Fairy type Pokemon. This is not what we want to see, but we can outpace them to that Glaciate before they can reach a potential Moonblast. We debuff their attack, and the opponent in overfarming allows me to reach a second Glaciate before they even throw. So at this point, they're double debuffed. Reshiram, I realize, is going to take neutral damage from the Moonblast, so I do tank it there. They're going to farm up to another potential Moonblast. So at this point, I am going to respect it, as this probably would get the KO from that range before they swap into an Empoleon. At this point, we've got such a huge energy advantage. We can fire off a Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare is going to grab the first shield from the opponent, and they overfarm, allowing a second Fusion Flare to be reached and grabbing both shields in the process. At this point, of course, we realize Zekrom going to completely wall the Empoleon, unless they're running Blizzard, which I believe this Pokemon can learn, but is very unlikely since, of course, Drill Peck did get buffed this season. The opponent goes incorrectly for the Drill Peck first, maybe not recognizing that, of course, that is resisted by the electric typing. This time, they do throw the correct move in Hydro Cannon. I'm going to massively overfarm here, firing off the Fusion Bolt. Fusion Bolt gets the KO there. If they come back in with Flourishes, what I'm going to do is bank another charge move, then swap back into Kyurem, and I'm there, unfortunately, with Pangoro. But this is where the pacing with that Dragon Breath is going to be so beneficial, as now I'm able to reach a Draco Meteor. Draco Meteor gets the one-shot up against Pangoro. They can Fairy Wind, farming down, but it doesn't matter. We have that Fusion Bolt locked and loaded, ready to throw into the Floriges, taking out the Floriges, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. I can see Kyurem into a Guzzlord. So, of course, another Pokemon benefiting from the better pacing of the Dragon-type fast moves. But we are, of course, going to be outpaced. I'm going to no-shield. Brutal Swing, not going to do too much damage, of course. Dragon Claw now costs 50 energy, so obviously not going to be a Dragon Claw. We can go for Glaciate, and with that debuff, the opponent actually maybe not thinking they would be able to get the KO from that range, so they overfarm. We go and grab both shields. I swap into Reshiram, and unfortunately met with a Togekiss. Now, this is not the worst matchup ever. However, Fusion Flare, of course, not going to get the KO. Both Glaciate and Fusion Bolt going to be doing more damage, as they are both super effective. So this is probably the Dragon we do not want aligned to the Togekiss. But either way, we can just shield once, go for a Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare gets the KO from that range. They come back in with the Guzzlord, and they do have quite a lot of energy. So at this point, I'm happy to no shield. Brutal Swing gets the KO from that range. We're going to come in with that Zekrom, and at this point, they do have enough energy for a Dragon Claw. So I'm going to shield. It is just a Brutal Swing, but they do fire off back-to-back charge moves. Of course, Brutal Swing will be connecting. They're now going to swap into the final Pokemon, a Belly Bolt, but they are on Thunder Shock. So of course, Thunder Shock is double resisted, meaning everything they can possibly throw is going to be double resisted here. They're going to go straight for a Parabolic Charge, boost up the defense there, but I'm able to tank it very comfortably. However, with that boost to their defense, unfortunately, Crunch is not going to get the KO here, and they are still fairly healthy. They're going to be double boosted by the time Kyurem comes back in. So can we get the Dragon Breath farm down? It looks like it's not going to happen, but we can reach a Glaciate on the CMP tire. It just depends. Do we have enough HP to lift a Dragon Tail? Yes, just barely. Able to survive with 1 HP and a Dream, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You can see Zygarde in the lead, so this is a great matchup for us, of course. I'm going to outpace him to the first charge move and Glaciate. Going to hit for double super effective damage. That does huge damage there. The opponent going to fire for charge move. Worst case scenario is a Crunch, which is just not going to do too much damage, but they do swap into a Shadow Charizard. So this one, I'm going to swap, try to catch an Air Cutter, which I'm able to do so. Zekrom is going to resist all the charge moves. However, of course, their Dragon Breath is super effective, whilst mine is just neutral. They will be able to shield once and then fully farm me down, which is not ideal. But Reshiram can, of course, double resist a Blast Burn, so we're going to force them to go for Air Cutters. They haven't got a boost yet, which is okay for me. So I'm going to no-shield the first move. They do not get a boost once again, which is actually great for me. If they do get a boost here, it could be quite awkward. But again, they get no boost. But unfortunately, they do reach a last-second charge move. So that is not ideal. They swap back into their Zygarde just to be fully farmed down, and the opponent's final Pokemon is going to be Empoleon. So at this point, I'm going to fire off that Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare going to be no-shielded. It's actually a Shadow Empoleon. Now I'm firing off the Crunch, looking for a debuff. Crunch does actually get the debuff there, but I still can't settle for a Glaciate. I have to full send a Draco Meteor, which I'm able to do there. They come back in, they Dragon Breath farm me down, but I'm also able to Dragon Breath farm down the Shadow Charizard, living once again with 1 HP and a Dream, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We see Virizion in the lead. So, of course, since they don't throw straight away, I am just going to go straight for a Glaciate. Glaciate is going to debuff their attack, and Stone Edge probably will get the KO from this range despite that debuff. So I do shield. I can live a Sacred Sword. It's not going to be comfortable, but I can still tank this. So I'm going to no-shield that. I'm going to go for 2 more Dragon Breaths, fire off another Glaciate. If they shield this, I'm not going to allow a full farm down. Instead, swapping into Reshiram, unfortunately met with a Shadow Swampert. But this is not the worst thing ever. We can go straight for a Crunch. Crunch is going to connect, of course. All shields are down. And I do still have a shield here, so I will be shielding this. The opponent does go for a Hydro Cannon. Doesn't really impact me too much there, as we can now go for another Crunch, throwing on CMP, winning CMP, getting that KO, and then come back in with Virizion. So from this range, Sacred Sword just barely doesn't get the KO, but I do want to just come in with the Zekrom after letting the Reshiram faint there, because I do want to save my Kyurem for a potential sacrificial swap. The opponent is going to swap into a Trevenant, so I'm going to go straight for Crunch. Crunch is going to do big damage there, and this is where saving that Kyurem is going to be very handy, as I'm able to catch the charge move. The opponent fires off the Seed Bomb. We can come back in, get that Dragon Breath farm down. We go for a couple of Dragon Breaths, fire off a Fusion Bolt, and of course, Fusion Bolt, despite being resisted, gets the KO from that range, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You can see Virizion in the lead once again. So, once again, we are going to play out this lead matchup initially. They do actually throw the charge view straight away. So, this time, I'm actually just going to shield straight away. We saw last time, even debuff Sacred Sword did quite a lot of damage. So, I'm going to fire off a Glaciate. And then going to look to swap into Zekrom. And the opponent is going to fire off another charge move. Of course, they're now debuffed. Sacred Sword not going to do too much damage. But they actually swap into a Mud Slap. Excadrill, which is a very surprising pick. Crunch is going to do decent damage there, but unfortunately doesn't really put them into Dragon Breath farm down range, since Dragon Breath not doing as much damage this season, and of course they are a steel type Pokemon. So here I'm going to shield this. I'm going to look to try and farm them down here, but you can see we're just not going to get that farm down, so I will fire off a Glaciate at the last possible second. Glaciate going to be no shielded. They come back in with Virizion, so once again going to fire off another Glaciate, and then I will be swapping into my final Pokemon, my Reshiram, and the opponent once again going to fire off a Sacred Sword straight away. Sacred Sword debuff doesn't do too much damage, but they've got Togekiss in the back, and once again aligning our Reshiram, the Pokemon that doesn't really have the tools to beat the Togekiss in the back, is not ideal. We can tank a Psyshock, but Fusion Flare just doesn't cut it. They can just go for a full peck farm down, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG top on there into the next battle. You can see Dragalge in the lead. So this is a fine lead matchup for me once again. They do have the pacing advantage. However, they've only got the advantage to Arquitel, which is resisted damage. They let the Glaciate go through. They then swap into an Armored Mewtwo there. And a bit difficult to see if they got a confusion through there. They should have done. I didn't throw on the best timing. But either way, I'm going to debuff their attack. I'm still actually able to reach a Crunch before they reach back-to-back charge moves. And Crunch is going to be shielded by the opponent. At this point, even if they've got Earthquake, we might still tank this. They go for Side Strike, and the opponent is going to fire off the next charge move straight away. So at this point, I'm going to no-shield this. Side Strike will be getting the KO, but that's fine with me. I'm going to save my shields for my Zekrom. I could throw the crunch straight away and, of course, outpace them, but instead, we've got them very low. I might as well shield, save the energy, and commit to a full Dragon Breath farm down. The opponent comes back in with Dragalge. I recognize this is just going to be an Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is resisted. It doesn't do much damage. And I get the full Dragon Breath farm down, coming out with tons of energy. Their final Pokemon going to be a Shadow Cradily. We can go straight for Crunch. Crunch does not get a debuff, but it doesn't really matter at this point. We are absolutely loaded. We fire off a second Crunch. They no-shield once again, recognizing they need to save a shield for a Glaciate, but it doesn't really matter at this point. I can just no-shield. Rock Tomb gets the KO, but we get the Dragon Breath farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You can see Kyurem into a Diancie. What the heck is this? Okay, this is awful for me, but of course, we're going to stay in. We're going to fire off a Glaciate, look to debuff their attack here. Presumably, since this is such a good matchup for them, they're not going to double shield or anything. I'm definitely going to shield this, as I need to get off a second Glaciate, and they actually go for Power Gem rather than Rock Slide, which of course did get buffed this season, so also that does help in terms of pacing. I'm now going to swap into Zekrom, and the opponent is going to commit to a Moonblast, but they don't get there. That is huge for me. We get an amazing farm down, coming out with so much loaded energy. And also, since they were double debuff, we didn't really take that much fast move pressure either. So this point, I'm going to fire up two back-to-back crunches. Second one coming through is going to connect, and it does drop their defense. Of course, from this range, Hydro Cannon doesn't quite get the KO there, but once again, I don't want to swap out. Instead, I'm going to save the Kyurem for a potential sacrificial swap. So we come back in with our Reshiram. I'm going to shield this charge move here as they do fire off another Hydro Cannon, and I'm looking to commit to a full farm down. We get that full farm down, and their final Pokemon is a Belly Bolt. So presumably, they're going to shield the first charge move, which they do. We go for Crunch, and we actually drop their defense, which is exactly why I went for Crunch in the first place. Now, Fusion Flare, going to do huge damage. I'm going to swap out, catch the charge move once again into that Kyurem. From this range, Parabolic Charge does get the KO, but now we can come back in with the Reshiram, fire off another Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's top there into the next battle. You can see Kyurem into an Empoleon. So, this is a bit of an awkward matchup for me. I'm going to swap into my Reshiram here. Unfortunately, they will outpace me because I do swap out, and they do just... what the heck? They do outpace me anyways. But anyways, we are going to go for a Crunch here. However, unfortunately, Crunch not going to do much damage up against a non-Shadow Charizard, and they get a substantial farm down as well, which is certainly not ideal for me. We're going to wait out Switch Clock here. I'm going to come back in with Kyurem, even though Zekrom does resist all the charge moves from the Charizard, unless they're running Dragon Claw, which is quite unlikely this season. Kyurem's just kind of useless up against Empoleon, and again, Zekrom is going to wall the Empoleon as well. However, I probably should have shielded there because Blast Burn does still do a ton of damage, and unfortunately, it doesn't really matter at this point. We can go for a Fusion Bolt. It does get the KO, but all shields are still in play there. They can just come in, go for a Metal Sound, farm down, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's to opponent there. I wasn't really sure if I should swap into my hard answer in Zekrom or maybe just play out the lead matchup with my Kyurem. I think against a different Empoleon, I did play out the lead matchup. That also didn't really work out for me either. But anyways, into the next battle, we see Lapras. They go straight for Ice Beam. So now I'm going to swap into Zekrom. I'm going to overfarm just slightly, fire off a Fusion Bolt on the CMP tire with that next potential Ice Beam, and we're able to grab a shield. The opponent is going to go for a Sparkling Aria bait there, which is unfortunate, but they swap into Annihilate. At this point, I'm going to go straight for a Fusion Bolt here. Could go for a Crunch, look for a debuff if I assume they're going to shield, but they don't shield there. At this point, I did think about swapping and catching the charge move, but either way, I'm kind of happy to just let the Zekrom go down. Actually, never mind, it does not go down there, and this time I do not save the Zekrom for a sacrificial swap, but I guess we do have quite a lot of energy on the Kyurem. So at this point, I'm going to shield this as they fire off a Sparkling Aria. They're going to swap into their final Pokemon, a Shadow for Alligator, but we are so loaded. We can go for Crunch, number one, grab that final shield, fire off a second Crunch straight away. Crunch, number two, does big damage, and it drops their defense there. And remember, Kyurem has a lot of loaded energy already. So at this point, we're going to come in, we're going to fire off a Glaciate at the last second here before we do reach 100 energy. We are very low, but we are still going to reach a Draco Meteor up against Lapras. And Lapras, very bulky, but Draco Meteor gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG top on there, into the next battle, I can see Kyurem into a Togekiss. Of course, not the worst matchup for me, of course. Dragon Breath's not going to do too much damage, and Glaciate, unfortunately, doesn't do enough damage to really put them into Dragon Breath farm down range, but the opponent might just end up shielding anyways, expecting, of course, Ice-type damage to do a lot. So at this point, we go for that first Glaciate. We can win CMP here, and I don't know if the opponent did throw straight away, or if they did just overfarm. Looks like the opponent didn't throw there, so now we are going to come in with the Zekrom, and the opponent swaps out, but they swap into a Belly Bolt, a Pokemon where we are going to double resist all the charge moves. We fire off the Crunch. Crunch not going to do too much damage here, but likewise, this Parabolic Charge does very minimal damage. I'm now going to overfarm. Going to look to throw a Crunch as late as possible, throwing on CMP. From this range, it gets the KO there. To come back in with the Togekiss, I'm going straight for Fusion Bolt, and this is super effective damage. Fusion Bolt gets the one shot. Their final Pokemon going to be a Shadow for Alligator, and whilst this isn't the best matchup for me, it doesn't really matter. I'm able to reach a Crunch before they throw. Crunch does big damage. I do not need to shield. They're farming up to back-to-back charge moves. They've got a Hydro Cannon and an Ice Beam, but it doesn't matter. I've still got a shield in play. We come in with a Zekrom. We get that Dragon Breath farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG top there into the next battle. You see Armored Mewtwo in the lead. So, of course, not an ideal matchup for me since they are very likely going to be on Dynamic Punch. And if not, they will have Rock Slide. So, we're going to go for a Glaciate, then look to swap into Reshiram. And by the way, I use Zekrom and Reshiram interchangeably as the Say Swap Pokemon. Honestly, I feel like Zekrom probably slightly better just because there are more Pokemon weak to the electric typing, I feel like, in the current meta. But either way, I guess if we swap into our Reshiram, then we save our Zekrom for the backline, which it could potentially sweep. But anyways, they come in with a Lapras. All shields are now down. Of course, this is the Reshiram, so Fusion Flare going to hit for neutral damage rather than super effective with that Fusion Bolt. But either way, we're going to no shield. Sparkling Aria does get the KO. We can come in with our Zekrom, and unfortunately, they do overfarm a little bit here, so I don't know if I can reach a Fusion Bolt in time, and no, I'm not able to do so. The opponent will reach an Ice Beam, and they full send it. So now at least I can overfarm significantly here. I don't overfarm too much and allow the opponent to actually just swap out and bank the energy. So Fusion Bolt gets the KO, but their final Pokemon is going to be a Steelix. And if they're on Thunderfang, honestly, not that bad of a matchup, but they are on Dragon Tail. And as well, I tried to swap and snipe with a Glaciate. It doesn't work out. The opponent actually able to swap out and get the confusion through, as I do not throw on the best timing. And as a result, they're now able to reach a Dynamic Punch, getting the KO. We do put them into farm down range, but unfortunately, Steelix is just way too healthy at this point. We can fire for Crunch. Crunch not really going to do much damage. Even if I get debuff there, doesn't really make a difference. The opponent already at the Breaking Swipe, and Breaking Swipe gets the KO there. And unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle. You see Talonflame in the lead. So a bit of an awkward matchup for me as I do have two better answers in the back. So I'm going to go for a Glaciate just before they can throw a charge move. And then I'm going to swap into Zekrom. Now, pretty much every Talonflame that I faced went straight for a Flame Charge here. So arguably could swap into Reshiram, take even less damage. But just on the odd chance that they do full send a Brave Bird, obviously coming in with Zekrom there, going to resist everything they can possibly throw. So that is a safer play. But anyways, the opponent looking to commit to a full farm down here, but unfortunately for them, we can reach another Fusion Bolt, grabbing both shields from the opponent and taking out the Talonflame. They're now going to come in with a Shadow for Alligator, but the Kyurem is still very healthy. I can just safely shield this up. They are going to go for a Hydro Cannon. Doesn't really matter too much there. I'm now going to overfarm just a little bit, fire off that Draco Meteor, and Draco Meteor gonna get the KO there. Their final Pokemon is going to be a Trevenant. We can come in with the Reshiram, outpace them to that Fusion Flare, and of course, Fusion Flare, super effective, takes out that Trevenant, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You see Guzzlord in the lead once again. So, if they do throw straight away this time around, potentially I might shield the first move. But actually, they are just going to go and overfarm. We fire off the Glaciate. They're now farming up to a potential Dragon Claw. So, I will respect the damage. Even though I've debuffed them, of course, Dragon Claw is going to hit for super effective damage there. We are going to go for another Glaciate, possibly grabbing both shields from the opponent. And we're able to do exactly that. So, at this point, I'm happy to no-shield this, force them to either full send a Dragon Claw, or I we'll reach another charge move, so the opponent is forced to use even more energy. Of course, Brutal Swing will get the KO from that range. I'm coming in with the Reshiram, and I'm committing to a full farm down. They don't actually reach that Dragon Claw this time around, but they're going to come in with a Togekiss, and once again, Reshiram unfortunately aligned to the Togekiss, but we go for Fusion Flare. I'm now going to swap into my Zekrom. Aura Sphere, worst case scenario, is going to hit for neutral damage, but it doesn't do too much damage there, and I am resisting the peg damage. Unfortunately, they just barely outpaced me by a single turn to that charge move, but that's okay. I can now overfarm here, and clearly they don't have a great response to Zekrom in the back. We go for Fusion Bolt, it gets the KO, and there it is. They've got Corviknight in the back. We go for Fusion Bolt. Fusion Bolt hits for huge damage, and now we can swap back into Reshiram. We've got the Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to Permet into the next battle. You see Talonflame in the lead once again. So, once again, going to stay in, fire off that Glaciate just before they do reach a potential Flame Charge or Brave Bird or whatever they're going to throw. Now we swap into Zekrom, and once again, they do just throw straight away. And again, they do go for the Flame Charge, but they swap into a Charm Togekiss, which is obviously a lot worse for us because Peck is resisted. Charm is super effective. Fusion Bolt does still grab that final shield from the opponent. However, Fusion Bolt is going to do more damage than Glaciate. So even though I can come back in with the Kyurem here and fire off a Glaciate, it won't quite get the KO. They actually fire for an Ancient Power there. Luckily for me, they do not get the boost. That would have been very awkward. But we fire off the Glaciate. And now I'm going to swap into Reshiram. I've debuffed their attack. And we're taking neutral damage from the Charms. But unfortunately, they do have a Greninja in the back. Now, I look to throw on CMP. And Reshiram wins CMP here. So at this point, I have an important call. I'm going to shield, and it is the Hydro Cannon, which means I can now overfarm just a tiny bit. I go for Crunch here. Doesn't really make a difference. Both moves will get the KO, and let's see. They're going to come back in with the Talonflame, and here I probably should have banked the Crunch, but I tried to catch the Charge Move. It backfires, as now we can go for Glaciate. I probably should have undercharged this fully here, because then I could have come in with a Crunch. Whether a Crunch KOs from this range, I'm actually not entirely sure. But either way, Brave Bird definitely takes out Reshiram. And unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle. You see Unova Stunfisk in the lead. So a great lead matchup for me. Opponent's going to safe swap into Walrein, and they are going to go straight for an Icicle Spear. So of course, this is going to hit for neutral damage. I'm going to no-shield this. Now swapping into Reshiram, where of course we're also going to take neutral damage from the Icicle Spear. I'm going to throw on CMP with a potential Earthquake, and Fusion Flare is going to connect. I might as well just shield here. The opponent is going to full send the Earthquake. The opponent is now going to look to bank some energy, swap back into Unova Stunfisk, but likewise, my switch clock is now coming up very soon. Fusion Flare is going to be no-shielded. I can now swap, go for that combo play with the Kyurem, fire off the Glaciate. Glaciate is going to grab a shield, and now we can very comfortably tank a Mud Bomb. And of course, I am resisting the Thunder Shock damage. I'm able to reach another Glaciate already. This might get the KO from this range, and it actually barely doesn't, but we do Dragon Breath farm them down. They're going to come in with a Drapion. I'm going to go straight for the Glaciate, and then I will be swapping into my Zekrom. Glaciate is going to connect. It debuffs their attack. They swap out. They try to reach a last-second Icicle Spear. It doesn't work out for them, and so the opponent just concedes the match. So, GG to Bummer into the next battle. You see Corviknight in the lead, so not really where we want to see it for this team, but I'm going to stay in anyways. It's not the worst case scenario, because it's very unlikely that they are running Iron Head these days. So go for Glaciate, debuff their attack there. Even if they full send a payback, not going to do too much damage, and the opponent is going to go for that payback. So now I'm swapping into Reshiram, and I'm met with a Belly Bolt, so not the worst thing ever. Of course, Zekrom going to be slightly better as I do double resist the charge moves rather than single resisting, but either way, Fusion Bolt does decent damage. Excuse me there, and we can actually reach a second Fusion Flare before they get to a charge move, or at least before they throw. Now they come in with a Como-O, so I do predict a shield, so I'm going to go for a Crunch, fishing for a debuff. We do not get the debuff there, but it doesn't really matter too much. I'm going to shield this as they fire off the upper hand. Now I'm going to go straight for Glaciate as they do come back in with the Corviknight. Glaciate is going to get them fairly low to the point where actually I can probably Dragon Breath farm them all the way down, but the opponent actually settles for just an Air Cutter. matter. It's debuffed. It doesn't do much damage. I reach a last second Glaciate. Glaciate gets the KO there. We can come in with a Zekrom, and all I need to do here is shield up the charge move. They might reach back-to-back charge moves, but it doesn't really matter. We've still got 3 Pokemon. We've put them into range where a single Dragon Breath will get the full farm down. Clanging Scales gets the KO there, but one more Dragon Breath from the Reshiram takes them out, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's top there into the next battle. I can see Obstagoon in the lead. Of course, not ideal for me. Going to be safe swapping into my Zekrom here. And the opponent's going to come in with a Skeledirge. But this is perfectly fine with me. This is a great matchup, actually. And made probably even better now that we do have better pacing to the crunches. I'm going to shield the first charge move. Likely they do go for a bait with a Torch Song, and they do. But it doesn't really matter. I'm now going to overfarm. Look to throw a Crunch on the CMP tie with the next charge move. And Crunch, number 2, going to grab that final shield from the opponent. So at this point, I think maybe I could live a Torch Song, but I might as well just shield anyways. I'm going to look to overfarm. The opponent swaps out into a Shadow for Alligator, and I don't mind that play whatsoever. We're going to go straight for Fusion Bolt. It gets the one shot, and Zekrom still not done, reaching yet another charge move. Fusion Bolt gets them low. I'm actually now going to swap into my Kyurem here, just because I realize Reshiram going to double resist the Incinerate damage, so I might as well save it for the Kyurem, for the Skeledirge. So now we're going to fire off that Glaciate straight away. Glaciate gets the KO there. Basically, going to force the opponent to throw their energy straight away. Torch Song gets the KO, but even with a single boost to their attack there, they're just doing no damage, and this can now only be a Torch Song, and Torch Song is double resisted. We can once again Dragon Breath, farm them down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up there into the final battle of this video, going up against Jamie Finn. I actually didn't recognize this because I don't really look at the names of 4 battles most of the time. But of course, going up against Jamie Finn, he's going to be running Triple Shadow. We go for Glaciate. I'm now going to swap out, and I don't know if this is a predictive swap on Jamie Finn's part. I'm sure he's going to do commentary on his own battles in his video, so he'll be able to tell us all. But obviously swapping into Lugia, not really ideal for me, even though of course I do have an electric type Pokemon. Unfortunately, just barely missing out on a second Fusion Bolt there. That is huge for Jamie. And yeah, not really ideal. Now we're going to come back in with the Kyurem. Of course, I'm going to shield this as a Fly is going to do quite a lot of damage there. I can now fire off a Glaciate. Glaciate will get the KO from this range. And I predict they're probably going to come back in with the Magnezone. So I'll be swapping straight away into Reshiram. But the opponent is going to have a Shadow Kingdra in the back. And unfortunately, especially if they've got Swift, they're going to have better pacing than I do. At this point, you know what? I am going to no-shield this. I'm going to look to Dragon Breath farm them down with the Kyurem. However, I still don't think I'm going to reach a Draco Meteor before they fully farm me down here. So let's see, can we get the farm down? Nope, unfortunately, just barely not able to do so. Even if I did get the farm down, we do not have a Draco Meteor loaded. Magnezone had energy, so unfortunately, we do lose that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.